I'm gonna show you how to sell anything to anyone, even if you have no experience. That's because everybody teaches sales wrong. So in this video, you're gonna learn the science that actually makes people say yes. I started in my garage. I had no network, no fancy degrees, no personal brand, but that company I launched went on to pull in 9 figures in revenue. And along the way, I found something strange. It was a kind of math. Not the kind of math from school, but the kind of math that makes people say yes before I even finish my pitch. See, most people hide behind their credentials. They have flashy titles and certificates because they don't really understand value. And I learned the hard way when I closed my first 7-figure deal that I didn't have any of that stuff. So I had to pivot because I had no brand, no case studies, nothing. All I had was an outcome that was so clear that the other person had to say yes. That's what I'm gonna teach you, is how to sell outcomes. And the best deal makers in the world, people like Elon Musk or Donald Trump, they're not just effective communicators. They're better at value math than anybody on the earth. They know exactly how to make a result feel inevitable. So let's cut the fluff and we're gonna get right into it. Selling outcomes today is like gunpowder in the 1400s. See, everyone back then had the ingredients for gunpowder, but only a few of them knew how to light it. And if they used it wrong, well, it just sits there in barrels. But if you used it right, it built empires. And that's the crazy part. Most people already have the ingredients to sell, but they don't understand the chemistry behind why people buy. So I'm gonna break that down because once you get the mechanics, you can turn any product and any service into a weapon of value. All right, here's what that looks like in simple terms. Every business and every sale runs on 4 invisible dials. Number 1 is the dream outcome. What does the prospect really want? Not what they tell you, but the thing that they fantasize about when no one is watching. And then number 2, the likelihood for them of the achievement of what they want. How confident are they that it'll actually work out for them? And the more certain they feel, the faster they buy. The number 3 is the time delay. How soon do they get the result that you've promised them? People don't want success someday, they want it yesterday. And then last is effort and sacrifice. What do they have to give up or push through to get there? And keep in mind, the less pain, the faster the decision-making process is. So here's the key. You can tweak any of those 4 dials and make someone happily pay 10 or 20 times more for the exact same thing. All you have to do is make the dream bigger, make the outcome faster, make the process easier and safer, and then you're gonna own your entire market. People don't buy the product. They buy how it feels to finally get what they've been chasing. And I'm gonna prove it to you. You can check the time on your phone for free, right? Or you can drop $20,000 on a Rolex. Both of them are gonna tell you that it's noon, but only one tells the world when you arrive that you have status. See, you're not buying just gears or gold with a Rolex. You're buying a pre-qualifier. It's a silent flex that when someone catches you, they think, wow, this guy has done something in his life. So if you're selling watches, you're not in the watch business. You're in the identity business or the status business. And the moment you start selling what it means instead of what it is, logic goes out the window and emotion takes over. Let's talk about price. This is where most people leave life-changing money on the table. Everyone's scared to raise their prices, and you can't really blame them. They think if I charge more, I'll lose customers, and who wants that? It's risky. But here's the math no one ever walks you through. I want you to imagine that you sell something for $100 and it costs you $50 to make it. But after marketing, shipping, and everything else, you pocket about $20. That's not bad, right? Now, imagine you take that same product. Maybe you add a little white glove or VIP delivery. Maybe a better experience, and you charge $1,000 instead of $100. Your cost doesn't jump 10 times. Maybe it goes from $50 to $250, but your profit, well, that shoots up from $20 to over $600. That's a 31x increase in profit for the same exact amount of work. So pay attention. It's the same table, the same watch, or the same you that you're selling. It's just a different perception of value. One of my early business mentors was the billionaire inventor Maurice Kanbar. And at the time, he was launching Sky Vodka. And he told me a story I'll never forget. When he first launched the brand, he priced it in the middle of the market. It wasn't cheap and it wasn't expensive. It was just safe. But it struggled. Nobody knew what to make of it. And then he told me that if he could do it all over again, he'd price it at the top end of the market and call it ultra premium. And then he would let the market come to him. That lesson hit me because he was right. The middle of the market is where you go to die. And that's the point. Price isn't greedy, price is focus. It forces you to serve fewer people, but to serve them at a higher level and ultimately make them more satisfied. And the wild thing is, people actually prefer it that way. Once you charge more, they assume that it's better. And they show up ready to play at that higher level too. That means they're better customers for you. So stop racing to be the cheapest. There's no prize for being second or cheapest. There's only the reward for being the most valuable or number one. After that lesson about pricing, I realized something else. You don't need a pile of cash to scale. You just need to know how to do the math. You see, when I started, I didn't have investors. I didn't have rich parents. I lived on a farm. And I never had any venture capitalists. I didn't even know what they were, but I had numbers that made sense. If it cost me $100 to get a new customer, I designed my offer so that they'd pay me $250 on average right away. So that first payment covered my ad spend, my delivery costs, and my customer service. But here's the magic. It also funded the next round of customers. So every time I made a sale, the customer was actually buying the next customer for me. That's when business started to feel unfair, but in a good way. Because once your customers finance your growth, then you've built a machine that fuels itself. You're no longer waiting on investors. You're not begging banks. You're just recycling cash through a system that multiplies it. That's the fastest way to scale from 0 to 1. Use your customers' money to buy your next customer. And here's the simple rule that kept my business alive when it should have run out of cash a long time ago. And write this down if you're taking notes, seriously, because it's the formula that separates broke founders from cash flow machines. Here's the formula. You have to 2x your customer acquisition cost, your cost of goods, and the cash collected in the first 30 days. Or in plain English, if your customer can't buy their twin in 30 days, you're growing on hope, not math, and that's not business. But why this arbitrary number of 30 days? Well, that's your credit card window. That's the world's only interest-free loan that we all have access to. So think about it. You spend money on ads today, the bill doesn't hit until next month. That's 30 days. If you can turn that spend back into cash before the statement's due, you've just built a self-funding machine. And that's not luck, that's speed, and that's accessible to almost everybody. Cash flow isn't a mystery, it's just how fast money boomerangs back to you. So when you get that right, you can scale as far as your imagination goes. Here's something wild that I learned watching tens of thousands of customers pour through my online store. People hate being sold, but they love buying. The moment someone decides, I'm gonna do this, they enter this hyper-focused window, and that short dopamine spike is where their new identity takes place. So they have to buy your product to confirm their identity. That's a virtuous cycle. It's that space between the commitment and the confirmation. And they finally said yes to change, and in that moment, they will buy almost anything that you put in front of them. So if you sell merch, you want upsells, you want to offer supplements right after they swipe. If you sell membership, offer a VIP service before they even log off, and don't circle back or try to sell by email the next week. Then the ether is gone. They call it the sales ether. They've cooled off and they've gone back to who they were before the sale. And trust me, they will buy those things if you put it through that moment. So write this down. Timing isn't pressure. Timing is presence. It's knowing exactly when the doors open and stepping through before it closes. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's zoom out for a second. Everyone's obsessed with getting new customers, new leads, and new followers. But the real money, I'm talking about the big money, it's not in new, it's in the repeat. So let me give you a different picture. Imagine you have two companies and they have the same product and same price point. Let's say company A signs 1,000 customers a month, but loses 900 of them. And then company B signs just 200 customers a month, but keeps 180. Well, A looks busy and investors might be attracted to it, right? But B looks quiet. However, if you extrapolate a year, B has over 2,000 paying customers on autopilot, and A is stuck in the same 100 it started with, and it's burned out, broke, and blaming the market. That's the difference between churn and compounding growth. Company A is sprinting on a treadmill, but it's going nowhere fast. And company B is climbing an escalator, and it's still moving even when it rests. The richest businessmen don't sell more necessarily. They just keep more. They reduce their churn because retention is valuation. Every loyal customer you have is free marketing with a heartbeat. It's living proof that your promise works. Think about it. Netflix doesn't just make billions because you watch one movie. They make billions because you never unsubscribe. And Tesla doesn't win because they sold you one car. They win because every time they update the software, you fall in love with it again. That's the secret. Don't just make customers. Make believers, form a tribe, keep the people who already trust you, and your business stops feeling like a chase, then it starts feeling like gravity. Imagine you've got a business that clears a solid $800,000 a year in profit. That's already better than 99% of entrepreneurs on the planet, right? And most people would stop there. Maybe buy a fancy house, a car, or maybe a boat and call it success. But here's where wealth builders think differently. You don't just ask, how much should I make? You ask, what's this income worth as an asset that I can multiply? So instead of staying transactional, you turn your model into something that can extrapolate and achieve a high valuation. Here's how you do it. You add a membership, a retainer, or a subscription, something that pays you every month. That's MRR. Now your company isn't just earning $800,000 a year, it's projecting $800K every year. And investors, they will pay handsomely for that kind of certainty. They might value your business at 8 to 10 million if it's earning 800,000. It depends what sector you're in, but with AI, it could even be higher. You didn't grind harder though, and you didn't hire a bigger team. You simply turned consistency into capital. That's alchemy. When your effort stops being a paycheck and starts being a force multiplier. Once you understand how to turn effort into equity, the next question is simple. Are you even driving the right vehicle? The difference between getting rich and staying stuck isn't more effort. It's where the effort lives, what you're spending your time on. Think about it like this. You could run an AI agency that makes a clean $1 million a year in profit. And if you sold it, you might get a 3x multiple on your earnings or $3 million. It's not bad, but you might realize that someone else with the same skill set as you built a niche AI tool called a microservices or an SDK. And it does the same thing as you, and it makes that same profit. But investors could value that business at 10 million to 40 million because it scales without bodies. So it's the same brains, the same work ethic, but it's a completely different game they're playing. That's the power of picking the right game. You could be brilliant, but in the wrong industry and still end up exhausted and broke. But then you just get in the right vehicle where your work multiplies instead of just repeating, and you'll start seeing exponential returns without additional effort. So ask yourself, is your business a treadmill or a Formula One race car? Because it takes the same fuel to drive both, and only one's gonna get you somewhere big. And once you're in the right vehicle, the next question remains, how to get into the right money hierarchy. In business, not everyone gets paid at the same time. Employees, for example, they usually get paid last. They trade time for whatever's left over after the business eats. But you could look at surgeons, landlords, or insurance companies. They always get paid first, before the work, before the risk, before the chaos sets in. They're not necessarily smarter. They're just positioned higher on the capital stack. So here's the mental shift. Stop waiting to get paid after you deliver. Start charging before you deliver. Here's how you do it though. You bill quarterly instead of monthly. Collect deposits, then set up retainers. Lawyers are excellent at this. The sooner you collect, the sooner you buy back your own freedom, because liquidity is leverage, and you don't need more customers necessarily. You just need faster cash. The business that controls the cash flow controls the pace of the game. And when your cash starts moving quicker than everyone else's, you stop reacting to opportunity, and then you start creating it. Every big jump in income, every so-called overnight success comes from breaking one invisible constraint. At the start, it's almost always capital. You just don't have enough money in your business to fund the next step. And you're scrappy and smart, but you know you're just borrowing time and hustling to stay alive. That sounds familiar. Maybe it's you right now. And once you solve that, the next wall shows up. That's your capacity. Too few people, too many plates spinning. You are the bottleneck at this point, and you're holding your own business hostage. Then comes the next step. It's competence. You've got money and you've got people, but there's no real C-suite. That's your leadership system and your leadership team. So you're just managing chaos, flying in between it like a tornado. And then finally, the last step is conviction. The ceiling isn't the market. It's your own belief in what you can handle. You stop swinging for bigger pitches, even though you could hit them and you're just bunting to get on base. Break one of those and everything soars upwards. And it looks slow from the outside. It could be flat, 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 flat each quarter. And then one day, boom. That's how real fortunes are made. Not in steady climbs, but in sudden jumps that only happen after years of pressure. Most people quit the week before the warp hits. This is that exponential hockey stick growth. But if you stay in the tension long enough, then it will snap in your favor. Let's zoom out for a second, because wealth isn't random. It's like a ladder, and every rung on that ladder is really just about control. So step one on the ladder is labor. This is where you're trading your time for money. You're doing the work, you're clocking the hours, but earning every dollar from the effort you're stuffing in that hour. That's where almost everyone starts in life. Step two is leverage. Now you're using systems, tools, maybe even you have a small team. You're not the only one doing everything anymore. You've multiplied yourself. And then step three is liquidity. That's where you've built something that moves fast. You control the cash flow, the speed, and the timing, which means you can act while everyone else hesitates. Then step four is legacy. That's where you own assets that pay you whether you show up or not. It could be real estate, royalties, equities, or brand value, whatever that version looks like. Every one of those steps, though, it buys you a little bit more time between paychecks. The rich are not free because they stopped working. They're free because they get paid before they start. That's the important lesson to learn. That's the game in a nutshell. Climb until time works for you, not against you. And as we close this talk, keep this one thing in mind. Every real breakthrough feels unfair. Selling based on value instead of cost, that feels unfair. Getting paid before you even deliver, like a surgeon, that definitely feels unfair. Making 10 times more than someone else who's working just as hard as you right next to you, that definitely feels unfair. And that's the point. The moment your success starts to feel a little unfair, that's when you know that you've left the grinding game, the labor game, and you've stepped into the game of being an architect. You are designing the rules instead of playing by them. The goal of business is never about fairness. So get that out of your head. The goal is always leverage and freedom. And freedom will always look unfair to the people still trading hours for it. So if this video helped you reframe how you sell anything, check out my last video by clicking right here. And don't forget to crush that subscribe button. This is the most aspirational community on YouTube. And once you master the secret science of outcomes, you're never gonna chase money again. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the trenches.